right, listen up. This is the Music Scene Podcast. I am your host, Dave Cudrak. Today's show, we've got guitar wizard Eric Steckel. Legit child prodigy. Started playing guitar, I think, when he was like 7. And then got his first real guitar at like age 9. And literally went on tour with John Mayall. You guys probably recognize that name back with John Mayall and the Blues Breakers. He played with Eric Clapton. But went on tour with John Mayall at the age of 12. The guy, he's 35 now, but he's a phenom. He's amazing. Very kind of hard rock / metal blues driven guitar work. It's awesome. I love it. But yeah, had a great time. There's a lot of content in this episode. So I'm going to cut this intro pretty short so we can get right to it. But yeah, enjoyed talking to Eric. He's on the verge of some big stuff coming very soon. So listen for that. And hopefully he'll be in my area, the Philadelphia area, hopefully sometime soon so I can go out and see his gigs. But yeah, awesome player. I hope you guys enjoy my conversation with Eric Steckel.
Hey, Eric. How's it going?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm all right. I'm pretty good. I actually was just sitting here at this guitar last night. I shot a video in it was a weird like open F like slide, right?
Open
so
F.
Yeah. So it was an interesting tuning. So now I'm just making sure that I'm back in sort of my standard, which is E flat.
Okay.
I was going to ask you if this is how you wanted it, but I
totally
think
fine. Yep.
Good,
we're
right?
good. We're good. Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah.
Good.
So Eric Steckel, right? Am I saying your last name right?
You are, yeah.
Okay.
Some people over the years have, spelled it wrong, but at least that's better than saying it wrong, right? So,
right.
And thankfully, Google always, no matter how bad somebody might butcher it, it's always gonna correct it.
That's awesome. Well, that means you've got a presence, man. Congratulations, you've got a presence.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been. It's been years in the making, but it feels good when things kind of, start paying it off.
Sure.
It's a good feeling.
That's fantastic. So, so thank you very much for taking the time to do the podcast. I appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. I know you're a busy guy. I was just looking at kind of your website and at least the one that's linked to Instagram. And I know they're a little bit ways away, but you're playing in like Italy and the Netherlands and stuff in the fall, right?
And also the summer. So I just got back from we did a short run. It was a week in Spain, 2 nights in London. That was super cool because there was like a back-to-back sold out thing.
That's
it was really
awesome.
fun. Then we did like a couple of just like major cities throughout Europe. We did, Antwerp, Cologne, all this stuff. And that was a great run. It was only like 14 shows. Just got back from that a couple of weeks ago.
Yep.
And now I'll be home for a little bit. I'm doing some session work, but then I go back for festivals. I go back like end of June all the way through like beginning of August. So I'll probably be, the house will be empty for about a month. But but it's cool. And then like you said, then the fall I'm doing another like indoor club tour that will be, I think only 3 or 4 dates are posted now. That'll be finished being booked in the next few months.
It's fantastic, man. Living the dream, right? Living the dream.
Yeah. I used to it's weird, man. Like when I was younger, I used to see the travel as like a little bit of a burden. Like, it was always exciting, but now that I'm older, I'm 35 now, and I'm like, the travel aspect of it, I actually find enjoyment in that too. Like, good. Separate from what happens on stage.
Sure. That's cool. That's good. Now, when you travel to these like festivals and things like, do you have time to do a little sightseeing and things like that?
It all comes down to how I want to approach it. So what's really cool about my manager, the way he knows me now, like my personality. So he'll send me a spreadsheet with like, okay, here's what I booked. Here's where it is. Here's what it pays. And then he basically is like, Eric, you decide how you want to do this. Like, do you want to come over early and do a little vacation / work? Do you want to come in right for it, go back each time? And so it's usually open. Typically jet lag is something that another thing that when I was younger, I just kind of poo-pooed that like, oh, that's an old myth or something, right?
Right,
And
right.
then I remember like right around the time that I turned 30, that's when my body was like, you could feel the jet lag now all of a sudden.
It became a real thing.
Right. It became a reality. And I was like, damn it. All the old guys were right. Damn. So usually when I factor that in,
Mm,
the smart play, because I'm in LA, so it's 9 hours from parts of Europe or whatever.
right. Yep.
So I try to now not come and go too much. I try to
Sure.
stay and it can be a little bit tough logistically
Sure.
because
Sure.
you're having then to spend your own money and put yourself
Mm,
up somewhere during a gap or whatever. But
yep.
it's better than being like perpetually on the wrong time zone.
Yeah. Yeah. I've never experienced that like to a long-term extent like you would, because
Right.
I've
Sure.
never
Sure.
I've never toured Europe, but
Right. Right. Right.
but no, I know what you mean. There was one time I went to Vegas. I'm in Jersey, like the East Coast,
Oh,
and
cool.
I went to Vegas and spent just like 3 days there.
Yeah.
And then of course Vegas is Vegas, so you had this like we had like this all night rager, and then I ended up taking the red eye home, and I could not function for like 2 days after.
Yeah. Isn't it weird? Like, it's this thing that like, it's not really medical, but it's not emotional. It's like some sort of weird nether world of like,
Hmm.
is it my body? Is it my brain? Is it both? It's,
Right.
it's very
Yep.
strange. By the
It
way,
is.
Jersey. So I don't know if you know, I'm from Allentown, PA originally.
Oh,
That's where I
nice,
was.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm an East Coast guy and
Okay.
I'm actually quite proud of that because, as much as I've been out here in LA now 13 years.
Hmm.
And I mean, the weather is like compared to
Sure.
Allentown. I mean,
Yeah.
come on.
Oh
This is
yeah,
like
all
a
the snow
vacation
and
every
stuff.
day. Yeah,
Yeah. Right.
yeah. When I grew up shoveling snow,
Yeah,
like
man.
my parents even have a photo of me at like, I don't know, 4 or 5 years old where the snow is higher than me, right?
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
definitely the weather and everything is great.
Hmm.
But this place out here, it's, if I wasn't in entertainment,
Right.
there's no way I would have stayed out here as long as I have because
Oh,
it's just
okay.
it's so unbelievably crowded,
Yeah.
and just and the taxes and the cost of living. It's like
Sure.
really there's like this constant kind of weight on your. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah, I bet. I bet. Yeah. My aunt, who I go to visit occasionally, she lives in Dana Point.
Oh, that's
Um,
beautiful there.
yeah, yeah, and she works in Laguna Beach, but lives in
Okay,
Dana Point. And yeah, I go out to
gotcha.
visit her occasionally, and it's every time I'm like, I can't believe you live here. Like this is
Yeah,
ridiculous.
yeah, yeah. My dad said the same thing. My parents are not, they're retired in Florida and they're East
Mhm.
Coast. They have no interest in the West Coast. It's not
Right.
their cup of tea. But one time my dad had to come out here for something and he visited me. Like it was a work thing for him before he
Mhm.
retired, but he visited with me maybe like a day and a half
Yep.
and then by the end of it he said the same thing. He goes, I don't know how you can deal with this. He goes, man, like because he only had one day where he had to drive on the 405, and he's
Yeah,
like,
that'll do it.
and he's like, you do this every day? I'm like, yeah, yeah. He's like, oh man, he's like, I would start killing people, man. This is
Yeah, right.
brutal. Like this is, so it's not for everybody. And if I wasn't in entertainment, I probably would have maybe I would have just stayed somewhere near my family in Florida or
Yeah,
something,
I hear you. I hear
But
you. But
unfortunately,
you gotta blaze your own trail, right, man?
yeah, exactly. And I think,
Yep.
the so many things in my career have emerged from me being here that would
Yeah.
not have
Hmm.
happened. So I see
Sure.
it as
Sure.
it's a balance.
Yeah, I've talked to. I mean, I've been doing this podcast for about 6 months. I started in October,
Cool.
and the guest list. I mean, I've got like a 2 month waiting list to interview people, which is an awesome problem to have.
That's great.
Yeah, so it's growing. My audience is growing every day.
Nice.
The point I'm trying to make those in the conversations I've had, two things that I've learned, right? Like the two major cities to do music full time are Nashville and LA, right? At least that's
Yeah,
what I've learned, right? London's
absolutely.
I've interviewed a couple people from London as well, and that's a pretty hopping scene as well.
True. True.
But from what I understand, it like with LA's a different animal completely because it's not only music, but it's all facets of art, right?
Exactly.
Television, movie, and everything else,
Right.
all forms of
Right.
media, right?
Yeah. And the infrastructure too. That's what people forget. Like,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, because, I'm the only person in my family. So there's a lot of things. I did a lot of things differently than my extended family has done. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm the only self-employed person in my family.
Oh,
I'm the
cool.
only one in the arts.
Yep.
I'm the only one on the West Coast.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually think I might be the only one in my family that's traveled overseas. So uh, it's this thing of like LA has become this thing where people are always kind of asking like, are you sure you want to be, you know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
but like you said, it's the infrastructure. It's like,
Yep.
it's oh, actually, I have an example. I remember a couple years back so we've been doing this thing now called the Steakhouse. Which Steakhouse is a studio
Mm-hmm.
in North Hollywood
Okay.
that started by Steve Lukather.
Yeah, he's
Yes,
awesome. Yep.
exactly. So the
Mm-hmm.
Steakhouse started like in the late '70s, early '80s, just as his personal studio.
Mm-hmm.
And Toto did many albums there, whatever. But now, I think since like the late '90s, it's now a public studio that you can go in and do work.
Nice.
So I remember we had to film a video for some kind of promotional thing. This was probably like 4 or 5 years ago now, and it was literally like the morning of this thing.
Mm-hmm.
We were like, let's go to Steakhouse. And we just drove over there 15. So it's like having, you're not going to have this in like Des Moines, Iowa or something. You're
Right.
not going to
Right.
have
Yeah.
that,
Yep.
that ability to get something done in 30 minutes because,
Mm-hmm.
everything's around. And it's the same with, equipment. Any piece of gear you might need, lighting, cameras. It's
Yep.
just,
It's
there's so
there.
much. Yeah. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's what people forget. It's like,
Sure.
it's not just the climate and going to the beach and all that. There's
Right.
also,
Right.
a working infrastructure.
Yeah, yeah, infrastructure, resources, all kinds of
Right.
stuff. You need a
Exactly.
guitar player for an album, or a bass player, drummer, whatever. You can get one in 5 minutes.
Yeah,
You know?
exactly. Yeah, you go through your like little sort of Rolodex or whatever, and
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, oh, uh, all these guys are either LA or Nashville, like you said.
Yeah, yep, yep,
Yeah.
yep. That's
Nashville
cool.
is really the thing is, I probably would have done Nashville, if the weather was less extreme there. Like it's the summers in Nashville are just broiling. I
Yeah,
mean,
yep.
and mosquitoes and the
Mm-hmm.
humidity, and the winter is. People think it's the South. It's not the South. It's
Right.
like the
Yeah, they get
mid
their snow and ice storms too. Yep.
big time, big
Mm-hmm.
time. Yeah. So I like the fact that out here, except for the fires, which
Oh
is
yeah, sure.
that's our cross to bear here. That's
Yep,
that's
yep.
our that's our plague.
Were you
But
affected by
besides,
the recent ones?
almost. So it
Okay.
was right during NAMM was when all the shit was going down here.
Yep, yep.
And so I remember it would have been like the night before the first day of NAMM,
Mm.
and I was packing a little small suitcase, like just to go, because I don't. I live in Santa Clarita, and this is a
Okay.
town that's north. It's like the top of LA County, very,
Oh,
very
okay.
far up.
Yep.
So if I were going to drive to NAMM every day and back, that would have been total 4 or 5 hours a day in the car.
Wow. Yeah, that's a
So
lot.
I always make sure I get rooms down in Anaheim for
Mm.
NAMM. So anyways, I'm packing my bag to go to NAMM. And as I'm packing the bag, of course, I have the TV on monitoring the fires.
Yep.
And at this point, the big fires were not right near me. There was the one in Malibu, and
Yep.
then there was the one in like Glendale, Pasadena.
Yeah,
But
Palisades.
as I'm sitting here packing my bag, I'm watching that a fire is breaking out like here.
Oh no.
And I'm like, and then I'm looking at, and I'm like, oh crap. And then I'm texting the landlord, and I'm like, what's going on? So basically, I went from packing a bag for NAMM to
Right.
packing an evacuation bag.
Oh no.
So now instead of just grabbing like a pair of
Yeah.
underwear and a t-shirt, I'm grabbing my passport and my guitars and my So I was ready to go, and basically what happened was, that the fire here,
Mhm.
because the winds weren't as crazy, they were able to get the water drops
Oh, okay, good.
right away, and that's
Yep.
what they couldn't do in the two big ones, because they
Right.
couldn't get the helicopters up there in 100-mile-an-hour winds.
Oh, I see. I see. Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
So
That's a
that's
shame.
why those
Yeah.
were so bad. Sure.
I want to talk about that guitar you're holding because that's your signature model, right?
Yes, and so what's funny is how the way we did things with these is
Mhm.
The part of it that's the signature is obviously the choice of woods, the
Mhm.
electronics, the shape, the
Yep.
thickness, the neck profile, which is so. Knaggs, their first signature artist, way before I joined the roster, is
Mhm.
Steve Stevens
Oh
from
yeah,
Billy
from
Idol.
Billy Idol. Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Mhm.
So he was with them since like 08, 09, when
Yep.
Joe Knaggs and Peter Wolf first created the company, because they're all ex PRS, guys,
Okay. Yep. Yep.
So when their first guy on board was Steve.
Mhm.
And so the SSC, which is the Steve Stevens model,
Okay.
it's similar in that it's kind of a Les Paul type thing, but the biggest difference is his neck profile is like the real classic kind of like 58, like a little bit chunky,
Mhm.
and not even taper. So like kind of thin here and
Oh,
then
okay.
fat by the 12th, right?
Yep. Yep.
So when I started working with these guys, the first thing I said to change is I said I want to do an even taper.
Okay.
I want to do like a sort of a soft V with like an even taper, and not too wide, you
Mhm.
know. So the first prototype guitar they sent me, which actually, what? Here, I'm gonna grab it real quick, show
Yeah.
you.
Please. Yep.
Why not? They're all in the rack here. So this was in 2018. This beauty, they call it sunflower. This
It's
finish,
beautiful.
right? And the
Yep.
top is just amazing.
Yep. Yep. Look
And
at
this
that.
one, if you see, this one has just a blank truss rod cover. There's nothing written
Yes.
on.
Yep.
So
Yep.
this one, and I think on the back, let me see. Yeah, it says like
Oh
proto
yeah.
or
Cool.
something.
It's like numbered. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome.
exactly. So Joe Knaggs built this for me and shipped it to me. And it was actually the first show I got to use this thing and try it was actually the Rory Gallagher tribute festival that they do
Oh,
in
cool.
Ireland. And it's
Nice.
run by Rory's family in the estate, and
Yep.
so that was and that was a big, 5,000 people, a big festival. So this debuted on that stage, and then
Fantastic.
Joe and Peter said, after when you come back from that, give us call us, give us
Mhm.
your good, bad, and ugly on the guitar. And I was expecting, as were them, that I would come back with, a list of tweaks
Yep.
or corrections, and I had none. None.
Really.
Yeah.
You nailed
I
it.
said, boys, I said, fellas, let's get this thing out on the market.
That's awesome.
So getting back to the guitar I'm holding. So what people sometimes, and I understand because it is hard to follow if you're not like a real diehard fan.
Mhm.
What we did was, so the cosmetics and the aesthetic of the guitar, like, do you want it to be gloss, semi-gloss,
Mhm.
matte? What
Yep.
color do you want? Do you want a black binding, a cream binding?
Yep.
All this is not, that is not the signature part.
Oh, okay.
So what that means is that the customer can say, give me a Steckel model, but I want it in white with gold hardware.
Oh,
Done.
okay.
You
Nice.
see?
Yeah.
So when Peter Wolf is the guy that like runs the business side of Knaggs.
Mhm.
And when he first called me in 2017 to discuss doing a model with me, he basically put it like this, and it was, I learned so much from this guy because he's been in the music instruments business since he was probably like 18. He's with Hamer, Soldano,
Oh, wow.
PRS. This guy's, so he said, look, he said, Eric, there's two ways we can do this. We can go the ego route, which is where your name is all over the thing, and it's
Right.
like, right. And he said, and you'll sell those to the diehard fans,
Mhm.
and he said, or we do a thing where we don't advertise for you on the guitar,
Mhm.
right? But of course, you still get your commission. It's still your model. Of
Yep.
course, it's, you still sign the back and whatever.
Okay.
But it's not an advertisement for Eric Steckel. And he said, if we go that route, he said, you're going to quadruple
Yeah, I bet.
your
Mhm.
income from these guitars.
Sure.
And let me tell you, he was right as rain, because as we speak, my friend Tyler Tomlinson, he's the guitar player for Morgan Wallen, the big
I
country
was gonna
star.
say I recognize that name, Tyler Tomlinson.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. That's
Tyler
awesome.
has in his rack of guitars. Well, he's all Knaggs, right?
Okay. Yep.
But in his rack of guitars that he uses with Morgan is a white Steckel model with the black.
Nice.
So my signature model is being played at arenas, all over the world.
That's
And
awesome.
that would have never happened. Like Morgan Wallen's people wouldn't have allowed an advertisement for some other
Oh yeah.
guy,
Yeah,
you
agreed.
know.
Agreed. Yep.
So
Yep.
Peter was right. Peter was right. He said,
Yeah,
if
man.
you take the humble approach, you're going to make way more money. You're going
Yep.
to sell way more, and you're going to get him in front of the right. And so he was right. He was right.
Yeah, man. People are going to buy them because it's a great playing guitar, not necessarily just because it's got your name plastered all over it.
Right.
Yep.
Right. So I learned a lot from that conversation because, and he, I didn't answer him right away. I thought about it for a couple days, and I said, you know what, it's better. It's better, because at that time, things were a little tight for me. At that time, I was
Sure.
going through a sort of a transition in my career.
Mhm.
So money was something that I was, concerned with.
Sure.
So when he threw that out, I was like,
Yep.
okay, let's go with that. Let's take that choice.
Option B, please.
Yeah. But to be honest, even now the things are going really well, and I'm not, and I'm not as worried about money. Even now, I'm glad I made that choice.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yep. And if you wanted to, you could always just get a guitar built that's got your name all over it just for you to play on stage if you want to,
Yeah. But I actually think that, I think that, what do they call it? The optics, right? The optics
Right.
of somebody up there, on his own gig, advertising. It's to me, it's a little redundant.
It's almost like a band wearing their own concert shirt.
There you go. Yeah. It's kind of like, look, man, everybody that's in this venue obviously is here to see you. So
Right.
what are you trying to prove? They're already here.
So let's talk about kind of where you started. You said you grew up in Allentown.
Yep.
And you're the only musician in your family, right? So
Correct.
how does someone who doesn't come from, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm assuming, who doesn't come from like a musical background or musical family, how does someone get to where you are?
Well, yeah, it's a good question actually, because whenever I visit my family, I go back to Florida once a year, and I do for Christmas and stay with my parents, and and even this last visit, that like even now, because I'm an only child, so the three of us, even now, the three of us sometimes like look back and go like, how did we pull all this off back then? Because it was kind of crazy. Because my parents are, they're retired now, but at that time they were both full time. They were working.
Right.
And somehow we managed to they also managed to somehow create a career for me.
That's great.
While they had very busy full-time jobs. My mom was a teacher. My dad was in banking and finance, and doing all kinds of, he would go around and do speaking things, at banks and things. So I'm like, how did they somehow still have time to get me, on stage with Mayall? And it's crazy, right?
It's great that they were supportive and allowed you to do something that they were not familiar or educated with. You know what I mean? It's awesome.
Exactly. But one thing that I will say is, so even though my parents do not play musical instruments, I think, so they actually my parents met because of a Deep Purple album.
Oh,
so even their meeting story was music related.
Nice.
So basically, so I think that they were like, I bet if I would have handed my dad a guitar, and if he had more time,
right,
he might have become quite competent on it, because just because of his love and passion for music, and that's what he shares with my mom, and that's why they got together in the first place. So I think that their love for it made it more fun for them to now have a child who's doing something that they also enjoy. And I think that was a big factor.
Gives them a little chance to live vicariously through you, I guess, right?
Yes. And I I've seen, there's pros and cons to that. I've seen, I know some folks that, when they were young, like child prodigies and whatever, that the parents were living vicariously a little too much.
Too much. Yeah.
Because there's a fine line there. Sure. I'm not going to mention any names, but I know some people that, I know a young woman on the scene, and her father is he sees this as like, this is his moment to be like, oh, I'm a manager, and I'm a mover and shaker, and and it's a little bit, it can be a little unhealthy if it's taken over that line.
Yeah, that's a shame.
So I'm lucky that my parents were cool about it, where they didn't actually, to be honest, they were almost maybe a little too conservative sometimes, because there were times where I wanted to push more and
Sure.
and be out there even more, and
Yeah.
they were
Yeah.
a little cautious.
Yeah. Well,
So
I mean, they're looking out for you, right?
sure,
They
of
got your
course,
best interests in mind. They want to make sure you're protected and not jumping off the cliff before you
right,
have a game plan. But
right,
that's
right.
awesome.
Yeah.
So what age were you when you first started playing?
8 years old, I got my first. It was an acoustic guitar.
Hmm.
One of those. You remember those those cheap Ovation acoustics with
Yeah, man, I had
like
one.
the plastic back, like the little
Yep.
like right, like
Yep.
the thing was like totally made in China, like
Yep.
total junk. But
Hmm.
that was, I had that, I think my uncle or my dad, somebody in the family got me that, and
Nice.
not necessarily, it wasn't necessarily as like they got it from me as like, all right, son, now this is going to be your future. No, it was
Right.
more
Right.
just like, something to buy a kid,
Hmm. Sure.
as
Yep.
opposed to a baseball bat or something, right?
Yep.
So, and then within a year of me just kind of playing that little acoustic and just being obsessed with it, and just walking around the house with it, and noodling around, by the time I was 9, so in just that year,
Hmm.
by the time I was 9, I already knew some, like pentatonic shapes, and I
Oh,
knew
really?
yeah, and I was
Wow.
doing like, I remember I was blues obsessed in those early
Okay.
years.
Yep.
And it's funny too, because a lot of the blues purists that are out
Hmm.
now on the scene, if they only knew, like, I'm like totally like, I'm the most hated, like, in the blues scene. I'm like the most hated, I'm villain number one. But
Really?
what's fun? Oh yeah, because I do this blues metal. I took the blues, and I did something with it that I
Yeah.
didn't ask for permission. I
Oh,
just
okay. Yeah. Yeah, I
right.
mean, for those listening that may not know, your style is very blues driven hard rock, which I
Yes,
love. I love that type of
yes,
music. Yep.
yeah. And I do too. I mean, for me, it was like my dad's album collection is, Gary Moore, Van Halen.
Hmm. Yep.
It was heavy blues,
Hmm.
but but I've actually taken it even heavier than
Okay.
those guys. And I
Yep.
think that, now, listen, I mean, it's worked out great for me, because, once I started getting heavier with my stuff, all of
Hmm.
a sudden the audience sizes are just growing,
Yeah. 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 Yep.
and not only the size of the audience, but the demographics change.
Okay.
When I was a traditional blues player, the audience was basically all men, 60, 65 years old. You know what I
Yep.
mean?
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
And, and then when I started kind of becoming more of a, like, like you said, the blues is always there. It's here.
Yeah.
It's always
Yep.
inside.
Yep.
But when my technique became a lot more hard rock metal,
Hmm.
all of a sudden now you got the young kids with the metal shirts, with the
Yep.
Slayer shirt,
Yep.
and they're in
Yep.
the front. They bring their girlfriend, and
Hmm.
and so all of a sudden now my
Yep.
audience just,
Well,
because it's
in your playing, I hear a lot of Zach Wilde, right? Like with
yeah,
the
yeah,
pinch harmonics,
yeah,
the huge bends, like. And I'm
exactly,
not. Yeah. I hope you take it as a compliment. It's not.
yeah,
Your playing reminds me.
yeah,
Reminds me
yeah,
a little bit of Zach Wilde when it comes to like a
totally,
blues driven hard rock
yeah,
heavy metal, and it's. Zach
right.
Wilde's one of my favorite players, man. He's awesome.
Yes, I love the Pride and Glory stuff.
Yes. Yep.
That
Yep.
was we. So me, it's funny. We joke around. We have it in me and the guys that like, because I use these Italian amps, these Mezzabarba things, and so
Okay.
me and those guys, we're all fans of the same kind. Gary Moore, Zach Wild.
Hmm.
We always say between us, we always say skinny Zach. We always say like, we're skinny Zach guys. We're pre Black Label.
Yeah. Right.
And we also say like, we say like, oh yeah, Zach up until No More Tears. Like, that's like our favorite.
Yeah. Yep.
Because I loved what he did on No More Tears. Like, if
Me too.
somebody were to
Yep.
ask me, if somebody like that had like no musical like knowledge at
Mhm.
all,
Yep.
and they were like, so what? Describe this blues metal thing, whatever. I would say, go
Mhm.
listen to No More Tears.
Yeah.
That's
Yep.
that thing,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
But
Yep.
basically, yeah. So I started with that little, Ovation acoustic, and I remember like I was such a blues nerd back. And that's why I brought up the purists, because if
Yep.
they only knew that when I was younger, I also was a purist.
Oh, okay. I got you.
That's the irony, because when I was younger, I was like, this is the stuff I was obsessed with.
There you go. Yeah.
Like, and I would only play pentatonic, you know, like
Yep.
right. I didn't know all the other Dorian and Mixolydian. I just played shuffles and blues licks, and I apparently got good enough at it in 1 year that when I turned 9, my family sort of secretly arranged for my birthday that they were gonna, you know, get me like a real guitar.
Oh, okay, cool.
So when I turned 9, they got me like a what was it? It was like just a classic black with rosewood Fender Strat. You know,
nice.
just the classic American, just, you know.
Yep.
And that guitar carried me through the first probably 10 years of my career. You know,
great.
all those early records, all that stuff. John Mayall. I do remember that later there was a point when I was with John that then I actually did get quite a nice guitar. Then I ended up, you can see this in some of the videos of me and John. At a certain point in the tour, I now had a 65. It was a refin, but it was a real 65 Strat.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah. That's and that was later, but that was later because by that point, the money with John was good. So I was in my dream at that point. I was a Stevie Ray Vaughan nerd then too. So for me, it was like the idea of getting a real vintage Strat. I didn't care about the finish, if it was refinned or not. I just wanted the real neck and the real pickups.
Yeah.
So you'll see a shift, like somewhere in the footage, the black Strat disappears, and all of a sudden you see this 65, this Sunburst 65.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
And so that was a real big step up, you know.
Yeah. So how did you go from a 9-year-old, right, with his first real guitar, I guess, to playing with John Mayall? Like, how does that journey come about?
Yeah, and man, so now that I'm an adult, when I look back on it, I'm like, that was wild, man. Like when it was all happening, it seemed like, yeah, just another day, you know. But now when I look back, I'm like, okay, that was pretty abnormal, you know. So
how old were you when you first started playing with him, by the way? So how long did it take to get to that point?
12.
So in 3 years, you're playing with John Mayall.
Yeah, and that's your reaction to it. That's now my reaction to it. So when this was all happening, right? When when this was my reality back then, I actually used to get mad that everybody was so obsessed with my age and talking about my age. And I remember I was so like, I wanted to be judged on my playing. I did not like that people were like, wow, look at this young kid up there with the full-size guitar, and he's playing. I hated that. And what's so funny is I couldn't wait to grow up. And now that I am grown up, I'm like, what the fuck was I in such a hurry for, man? I had no bills. I had no credit cards. I had no rent. I had no drama, you know? So I don't know why I was in such a hurry. But the point is that it all happened within, like you said, in that 3 years span. So what happened is they got me the Fenders, the black Strat at 9. And because I was an only child, and because growing up in Pennsylvania, we had, you know, a basement.
Yeah.
So I was basically just given carte blanche to just, you know, I would just be down in that basement, man. You know,
all the time, hours
every day. If I wasn't in school, I was down there.
Nice.
So it was just this hyper focused thing of where, because my first album was 1 year before the John Mayall invite.
Yep.
So when I was 11 in 2001, I made my first album.
That's great.
And because that was because of the novelty aspect of like an 11-year-old kid made an album, what? I got to hear this. So the curiosity, that album sold really well because everybody was like, what? You know? And that album is what kind of started my reputation of like, okay, this kid might be the next one coming up, you know.
Right.
Because in the 90s and early 2000s, everybody wanted to fill the void that Stevie Ray had left when he died.
Yep.
So in that period of time, there was such you know, fans of the blues and of Stevie Ray were chomping at the bit for who's the next one gonna be.
Right. Yep. Yep.
right? Because in that you had a lot of great talent in those years. You know, you had Johnny Lang, Kenny Wayne Shepherd, Derek Trucks. You had all these cats
Yep.
coming out of that, you know, and I was part of that scene.
Yep.
So basically, then we fast forward to I'm like I had just turned 12 and still living in Pennsylvania with my parents, and we got an invite. So at this point, I wasn't playing out of state very much. I was playing mostly in the suburbs of Philly, and
Okay.
you know, and I was building up a name and reputation in the Allentown,
Yep.
Philly area of like, man,
Yep.
this kid is the
That's
the young
awesome.
gun, whatever. So then we got this offer to come down to Sarasota, Florida.
Okay.
And there was a festival there, the Sarasota Blues Festival. The woman who ran it, her theme for decades was the 12 o'clock spot. The opening slot was always a young talent.
Oh, cool.
It was always an under 18. It was always like a up and coming thing.
Yep.
So she had heard about me through the grapevine, and invited us down. And of course, we were a Pennsylvania family, so that was kind of a big road trip.
Sure, yeah, man. You're going to Florida, yeah, man.
Yeah, right. With a guitar, right?
Yeah.
So so the lineup that day, just my luck. I was the opener, but check out who the two headliners were: John Mayall and Solomon Burke. Solomon Burke is a legend, not so much in blues, but he's a soul singer, and this guy.
Okay.
This guy was, what a character. He had like 19 children, and they all were on stage with him singing backup. And
That's great.
the guy was a legend. So those were the headliners. So what happened is I did my 12 o'clock show, probably in only an hour or something. And word is now going around amongst the festival, in the backstage, and there's this murmur of like, man, did you see that kid? Like, that was crazy. So basically, by the time John and Solomon arrive, sort of at the location, they're already getting wind of like, there's this kid.
That's awesome.
And so basically, I got up on stage with both of them that night.
Did you really?
Yeah. And man, it was just it was like, I still remember it like it happened yesterday. I mean, I remember I remember what I was wearing. I remember what it looked like. I remember the amp, everything. And then basically, it was a big night for me. I got to play with all these big cats. And then what happened is, then backstage, John said to the woman running the festival, is this kid's father anywhere around? And she said, yeah, I'll take you to him. So while I'm on stage, not knowing this, my dad and John Mayall are talking behind the stage.
That's great.
And John is saying to my dad, I've never seen anything like this. I want to bring your son on the road. I want to make him a special guest on my upcoming tours. And now keep in mind that at this point, we had people coming out of the woodwork, offering and promising things that never happened. I had been, and it became a thing in my family of like, here we go again, because we had people. I feel bad for any of the prodigy kids out there, because it really brings out the degenerates of the world, because everybody's telling you, I can get you on Letterman, I can get you on Ellen, I can get you on this, and they're all full of it. So even though, of course, my dad was, my dad had the Beano vinyl. So, of course, John wasn't some random idiot. But,
he's talking to the source.
Yeah, but it's still, because I remember in the car ride home to Pennsylvania, my dad was already sort of like lecturing, like he was already setting me up of like, now, son, remember, things don't always work. He was already preparing me for a disappointment.
Trying to cushion the fall. Yep.
So we were ecstatic that John, liked what I was doing, but we had been burned many times already. So we were just kind of, I remember I just went back to school and life just went on. And I had eventually kind of forgotten about it, and I'm just with my friends at school acting silly. It just was like, okay. And then maybe a month after that show, my dad received an email from John, and in the email, were 3 PDF attachments, and they
Mm.
were 3 first-class tickets to Stockholm, which was Stockholm was the first date of that particular run.
Mm.
And my dad was like, "All right, I guess we're doing this."
Yeah, man.
And then the rest was history. I went over there and I did the tour, and then it just kept going. And then John would have me back for other parts of the tour.
Mm.
And then eventually, even John was the first person to bring me to LA.
Oh, okay.
So in 2005, after I'd already been playing with him for 2 years, in
Mm.
2005, he was making a record. It's actually a place that I drive by a lot. It's in Calabasas was the studio, and so my dad and I, he flew us here to LA. My first time ever being in this place, and
Yep.
yeah, and I did some lead guitar on the record on that
Very
Road
cool.
Dogs album,
Nice.
and then yeah, and then John, the last big thing John did for me to really help was that same year, Reuters News, which is a big international news sort of like AP kind of thing.
Yep.
They did a little story on me that was, syndicated because it's Associated Press,
Sure.
and they actually interviewed John in London. They got a hold of him and got a few words out of him, and John said some things about me that just those few words he said about me, having those on my resume has given me a different life than I would
That's
have had
awesome.
without it.
That's
So
fantastic.
John, and I feel bad. I just missed him. He died, I think it was I think it was two years ago,
Yep.
in his 90s.
Mm.
And I didn't get to see him much lately, and I
Right.
regret that,
Sure.
But
Sure. Yep. Well,
but no, I
you're all
John
busy.
pretty much my career
That's
because
fantastic.
yeah.
Yep. I love the fact that you're 12 when you do that festival. The
Yep.
very first
Yep.
one was down in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
You're a 12-year-old kid. I remember myself at 12. And now, granted, I'm no guitar prodigy, but if somebody said, "Can you go up on stage in front of 5 or 10,000 people and play Mary Had a Little Lamb?" I would have dropped the ball completely. But
Oh,
you,
wow. Okay. Right. I see.
you as a
Yeah.
12-year-old kid went up there and friggin' nailed it, man. And I love the fact that you nailed it,
Yeah.
that people are just talking about you for all day. It's fantastic. I love it.
Well, and it's a personality trait because this is what you just mentioned is a topic that I'm really fascinated with, especially lately, because I really do believe certain people are wired for certain things and others are not. So my dad always joked about, and he still even says it, like he always calls me like, how does he put it? He goes like, you're like the big game quarterback. Like,
Oh, yeah.
Like meaning that during practices, you're not really you're not really throwing the ball that, you're just kind of like coasting to it. But when it's time,
yeah, man,
you do it. You step
that's
up.
awesome.
And
I
my
think
dad's
that's great.
always, and that's something that's, that's just the people are born the way they are. These things are just hardwired in.
Yeah. Yep.
So the reason why I didn't freeze or get stage fright is because my wiring is that actually I'm more comfortable up there than when I'm not on stage.
Right.
People find this hard to believe, but certain personalities like mine, I am actually uncomfortable when I'm not up on stage in front of a large group of people because so I'm more nervous. I get more nervous at a master class with 10 chairs and talking this that makes me more nervous than being up there in front of a sea of whatever. Because and people, sometimes it's funny, people like will say like, "Man, you guys are crazy. You guys do like a 2.5-hour show nonstop, no break." And people think that it's a work ethic thing. No, it's not work ethic. It's that I don't want to have to leave. Because when I get off that stage, I know what's waiting for me. I got to now talk to people. And I got to now. And I'm a little bit, it's probably like a spectrum thing. I think everybody's on that autism spectrum at somewhere.
Yeah.
And I know for me, I get a little humming. I get a little tongue tied when I'm just having to make small talk and stuff. I'm just not good at that. I'm not good at like oh yeah, how's the weather? Oh yeah. I'm just not. That's not that makes me nervous.
Yeah.
So that's why on stage I'm like, sometimes they gotta like, sometimes literally the promoter has to like give me a sign like, you gotta wrap it up, you know, like we gotta like close the festival. Come on, you know.
That's
But so
great.
that's the reason why at 12 I didn't get up there and just like piss my pants, because
Right.
I was wired to be that kind of person, to just go up there and do it.
That's fantastic, man. I
Yeah,
love it.
yeah,
I love that. I love
yeah.
that. So I know you mentioned a few other artists, right? Who are some of your inspirations, or what's the word, influences? Who are some of your influences, like even as a kid or up until now?
Mhm. Yeah, a lot of them haven't changed, which is cool. You know, Gary Moore, Rory Gallagher,
Mm-hmm.
you know, Eddie, Zach,
Yep.
a guy named there's a guy bit obscure, Dan Huff.
Okay.
Dan Huff is a Nashville producer legend,
Mm-hmm.
but in the 80s, before he went back to Nashville, he was out here, kind of trying to make it in a band called Giant.
Oh, I
And
know them.
Giant,
I know them.
yeah, and
Yep.
that's Dan Huff on guitar
Okay.
and,
Yep.
and vocals, yeah. And Dan, you know, Giant did 2 albums. They had a little bit of success, but Dan was just kind of I think he was quite religious, like he was like a real devout Christian.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine the 80s LA was like, you know, imagine you're a Nashville boy, Christian, and you're
Right.
in the 80s LA trying to make it, you
Yeah.
know,
Right.
like
That's not a good
wow.
combination. That's not
So
going to
he was,
mix.
yeah. So he went back to Nashville, and that was a good choice for him, because
Mm-hmm.
then he started winning Grammys. He did, you know, Faith Hill, Rascal Flatts. The guy is like
That's
mad.
awesome.
I mean, the guy's, you know, he made a lot of records, and but his guitar playing from the 80s was that like bluesy metal stuff that
Okay.
I love, you
Nice.
know.
Nice.
So Dan is on the list. I love early I like Clapton with humbuckers.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah,
Playing
you
the
know,
Les
like what?
Paul. Yep.
Yeah, you know, because when I got to stand up there with John Mayall every night, and I'm
Mm.
like, in my head, I'm going, this is also where Clapton stood. You know, like
Yeah, that's
it's
right.
right.
Yep.
And so I love the early. I mean, Clapton with the Strat. I mean, I love his voice and his songwriting,
Mm.
but the playing for me, once he started playing a Strat, it wasn't the same.
Yeah. Does that affect you as well? Like, I mean, because you've played a Strat before, so
Oh yeah, I was a Strat guy.
yeah, and your signature model has 2 humbuckers. So
Right.
tell me, and I don't know if you even have any thoughts on it, but is there any insight on like how you play differently when you're holding that compared to a Strat?
Great question. So what happened is, so in the latter years of me being a Strat guy, I was quite disgruntled.
Mm.
I was not getting the sound that I had in my head.
Okay.
And I was not able to pull off the things I wanted to do with the instrument. So the moment that I knew it was time to make a change was, it was probably with my last tour with that 65, I think.
Okay.
And I had started using, and this was kind of silly, and I regret this. I had been using the bridge pickup, you know, on the Strat, which is like, come on, you know, it's
Yeah.
a little,
It's very
and I was,
tinny, very thin.
yeah,
Yep.
right. And it
Mm.
was an original, you know, original 65, you know,
Yep.
very thin, you know, and
Mm.
I had been stacking a bunch of overdrive pedals to try to get it to be like thick,
Oh,
but it wasn't.
right.
So I was trying to like get something out of this instrument that it was not made to do.
Sure. Yep.
So it was just, what happened was there was a change in my right hand, kind of changed, my phrasing changed, and the Strat was not the right tool anymore.
Right. You weren't getting the
And
sustain that you were looking for and things like that, right? Okay.
as people know this now about me, I'm kind of known as like the no pedal guy, you know, now. But
Okay.
at the time, I was stacking overdrives like crazy, because I was trying to thicken up this,
Right.
you know, and you know, people that are listening to this obviously are guitar, so they know this.
Most of them,
But
yeah.
any non-musician maybe listening,
Hmm.
you don't want to ever, with a vintage guitar, open up or reroute, like
Yeah.
no only a moron would like desecrate a 65 Strat, because then all of a sudden you just killed the value.
Right.
So
Yep.
because sometimes people have said like, oh, but why didn't you just put a humbucker in there? Because that would have made the guitar worthless. Like,
At least you had the wherewithal to know not to do that, even back then.
Of course. So I ended up selling the guitar. I don't know, around 20. When was this? 2012,
Okay.
something. Right before, I remember it was like the money from that guitar sale was what actually I used to move to LA and get started. Yeah.
So you made out pretty well with that guitar.
Yes. Because when I first got it, it was it was a bad refin when I first got it.
Yep.
And nobody saw these, because by the time I was playing it, it was already fixed by the custom shop in Fender. But it was originally, it was an Olympic white Strat that someone had actually used like house paint. Like, it was not like guitar fit. It was like somebody like literally went to like Sherwin-Williams or something and got, it was the most, like, you could see the streaks.
Oh my God.
Like, and the guy who sold it to me is actually a famous guy in the amp, George Alessandro. He's the guy who makes John Mayall's cabinets and stuff, and Derek Trucks plays Alessandro. It's that guy, because he's a Philly guy. So my family knew him. So when he sold me the guitar, I got it for like, I got it for like $4,000, a 65 Strat, like crazy, right?
Yeah.
Because George said, look, he goes, Eric, and George is an expert, so I trusted him. He says, look, he goes, this guitar, like, the nuts and bolts of this thing are perfect. He said, but this paint is like, so he said to me, he said, here's what we can do. He said, you can pay me now and I give you the guitar. He said, or you give me a couple more weeks. And he goes, I'll call, he knows everybody. He knows Dale Wilson, John Cruz. He goes, I'll call my buddies at the custom shop. He goes, I'll have them do it to spec. Like, I'll have them make this thing 65, like, And I said, let's do that. So 3 weeks later, the guitar is shipped back to PA. I open it up and it's like, oh man,
I can't even
look
imagine.
at this, man.
Yeah, man.
And that was the guitar that then you see on the videos with John Mayall.
Sure. Yeah.
So, but to answer your question, the last few years with the Strat, I was fighting it. I was fighting it, and I also had and my noise floor was going up and up and up now because I got pedals stacked.
Yeah, all the pedals.
Yeah. So basically, it just kind of hit me of like, okay, the music I'm writing now, this Strat ain't cutting it.
Right.
So after I sold that Strat, came out to LA, the first company I started working with here was Tom Anderson.
Okay.
And Tom is a legend also in guitar making, because he was Schecter, Ibanez, and so Tom Anderson guitars, they look a lot like Suhrs as well. It's super Strats. Okay. They're like the flame maple super Strat with the humbucker, right?
Yep.
And super, 24 frets. Super thin neck with like a 16-inch radius, like meant to shred, right? Because Tom comes from the Schecter Ibanez school,
and they're all shred guitars,
16-inch radiuses,
Yep.
So that was my next jump. So I played Tom Anderson guitars for years, 5-6 years.
Yep.
And then the next thing was Knaggs, and the next thing with Knaggs started because it was probably at like, I think it was NAMM 2017. And I was not living in this house. I was living over by Mulholland's Drive, like that windy road. And some friends of mine from Spain, guitar players that were in for NAMM, they wanted to stay in LA and do a little vacation for themselves. And so my friend, this guy Tony, he calls me up and he says, hey Eric, are you around? Let's get together. And I said, yeah, come on over. I said, bring some guitars, we'll jam on the deck,
Nice.
And he brings over this Knaggs. And I had never really seen a Knaggs or played one, and it was beautiful, this guitar he brought over. I'm like, man, what is this thing? And he said, here, play it a little bit. And I'm playing it and I'm going, oh man, the neck is so nice. And basically then I did something strange. I instead of just getting in touch with the Knaggs guys and asking to do a deal, I just went on Reverb and bought one, like a regular Joe. In hindsight, I'm not sure why I did. I don't know. I just bought one. And within 2 days of me owning the guitar, because I immediately made videos on social media.
Okay.
Within 2 days of me owning that, Peter Wolf, who runs Knaggs,
Right.
reached out and said, hey, a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend
Yep.
sent me, because I did a Facebook Live video showing it off.
Oh, okay.
And he goes, here's my number. Call me as soon as you can.
Yep.
So I call Peter. He goes, hey, Eric, nice to meet you. Great video with the Knaggs. Listen, you want to work with us? You want to do something? And I said, yeah, sure. What do you got in mind? And the first offer he made with me was, he goes, well, let's just, I'll give you a Steve Stevens. I'll ship you one, and you know, see if you like that, whatever. And I said, okay, sounds good. And he goes, you know what, Eric, but wait 1 second. He goes, stay on the line. I want to call Joe about something real quick. I'll call you back in 5 minutes.
Yep.
Calls me back in 5 minutes. He goes, nah, scratch the Steve Stevens. Let's build you something. And I was like, oh, okay.
This is your first conversation with him, right?
Yeah, I never even met the guy, and he has and Peter he's a German. He's from Germany, and he has this, like, so first of all, he looks like Heisenberg from Breaking Bad, right? With that, yeah, and he has this deep voice with a German accent, right? Yep. So I'm on the phone with this guy, and I'm like, oh my God, this guy sounds so scary, man, you know. And he's the sweetest guy. Once you know him, he's the sweetest guy. Yeah. But he has, his look and his voice are very intimidating, right? So he says it doesn't make sense for an artist like you to be playing someone else's guitar. That was his line.
That's awesome.
And he said, listen, describe for us. Now, keep in mind that at this point, everybody, the whole world had only seen me playing either real strats or super strats.
Right.
Right. So when Peter said, call us and describe for us your perfect guitar, I started describing sort of a two humbucker thick thing. And he was like, whoa, wait a minute. He goes, are you talking, you want a single cut? And I said, yeah. He goes, sorry, I've only seen pictures of you with double cuts. And I said, yeah, but listen, I said, I've been unhappy for like 5 years now. You know, I said, I haven't been happy with my tone, and I want to make this change. Yeah. So basically the Knaggs partnership kind of killed several birds with the same stone, because it gave me a career boost. It gave me a source of income, but it also gave me the tone that I'd been chasing for a long time. Yeah, so.
That's awesome. Have you ever played like a Les Paul in a Gibson Les Paul in a professional setting, or no?
Yes. Sometimes, I mean, I remember many years ago, 2013 or 14, I was on tour, and a gentleman that had a real 59. Oh, wow. You know, he called my manager at the time and said, like, hey, I don't want to step on any toes, but I'm coming to Eric's show, and if Eric wanted to play the real 59, I can maybe bring it to the backstage, or you can put me on the guest list, whatever. And so I played a real 59 on a gig a couple years ago, and then I did. See, now that I'm with Knaggs, I go to a lot of these events with them, you know, guitar shows and things. So I think it was the Atlanta guitar show a couple years ago, and during like a lunch break, I was just kind of walking around the floor, and this Songbirds, which is in Knoxville, Tennessee, they're a guitar museum. Oh, okay. And they have a bunch of amazing original old guitars, and one of the guys from Songbirds knew me, was a fan of my playing, and said, Eric, come here. Can I get some videos of you playing some of the guitars from the thing? So they were just handing me guitars, you know, bursts and things, right? Nice. And they're great. But the big difference, that a lot of people don't know this if they've only seen Knaggs and never actually played one. The big difference between a Les Paul and a Knaggs is that the Les Pauls typically have the spike in the mids or sometimes even upper mids. Okay. And the Knaggs guitars, they are a little more in the low mids. There's a little more of the Knaggs have a little more of this, like this sort of like thing on the bottom. Okay. This sort of low mid, I would call it. Okay. Right? Like a bit of like a rumble, like a almost like an old V8 engine, just kind of like idling. You know? Nice. And whereas the Les Pauls have that sweet upper top thing. That's why like a Les Paul into like kind of a Dumble type circuit. Yeah. It's really smooth, because it's like the Dumble is softening those upper mids. Right. But the Knaggs has that more low mid thing. So the
Mhm.
Knaggs into a more modern amplifiers.
Okay. Yep.
That's a really good blend.
Yeah.
You know,
It's interesting you say that because you know, I'm not a rock star like you are, but I've got my Epiphone Les Paul, right? And that's what I got hanging behind me. And
right?
I put DiMarzio pickups in. No, Seymour Duncan's. Sorry.
Okay.
Yes,
Yep.
Seymour Duncan's. I forget which model because it happened like 20 years ago I put them in.
Right.
And I was playing in a band a long time ago with a friend who had a Gibson Les Paul, and I
Sure.
preferred the sound of my Epiphone because of those pickups.
Right. Yeah, you're right. It's yeah, gear is so subjective to the needs, the hand, the
Mm,
ear of the player,
yep.
and I mean and even sometimes as specific as even the song. You
Sure.
know, it's you know, sometimes in studios I'll use different guitars, even if they're in the same tuning, not because
Yeah.
of tuning, just because of vibe, you know,
Vibe.
like
Yeah.
you know.
Absolutely.
So
Yep.
yeah, handmade guitars are, which is why I love the Knaggs, because they're handmade. So even though there's obviously neck profiles and measurements and
Mm,
numbers and things, there's still going to be subtle nuances because they're made by hand.
yeah. And I mean that thing. I mean, I've seen a bunch of your videos when you play, and the racing stripes are apropos because that thing
Yeah,
is a
yeah,
fucking race car, dude. I mean
yeah. I know, right?
that guitar is a machine. I love it.
I'll tell you what, it's good timing for this interview because so I have a really amazing tech,
Hmm.
and the guy is he's very patient with me because I can be a bit of like sometimes he shakes his head a lot. So I like how can I explain this? I don't take very good care of
Okay.
my guitars. Um, but there's an explanation for why. So because I came up with, as I was coming up, you know, being a kid, you know, without, you know, you don't have your own money as a kid, you're living with your parents, whatever, you know,
Hmm.
and a lot of the gear was just whatever I had. It wasn't, you know, my parents weren't wealthy, so I couldn't say like, hey, yo, pops, I want to get me a Tom Murphy 59 with the, you know, like I couldn't. It was like, son, we got you a Strat, and this is
Right.
all we can afford right now,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So I came up with you know, like Mexican made gear, whatever.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I was never a gear snob.
Yep.
So now that I'm playing expensive and valuable gear,
Hmm.
it's not because I have deep pockets, it's because I'm working with these companies.
Right. Yep.
I'm
Yep.
because I joke around. I always joke around. I say, man, I can't even afford, like, I don't make enough money to buy my own, you know, like you know, like you know,
I
yeah,
love that. That's
I'm not
hilarious.
because I'm not the demographic. I'm not, you
Right.
know, these guitars that you know, we sell these to people that view it like they're almost like art pieces.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
I
Yep.
know I have a couple of friends here who they have, a friend of mine has a really successful shipping and freight company and business,
Hmm.
and he does, I mean, he does play, of course,
Yeah.
but it's not his method of income.
Hmm.
And he keeps his guitars, you know, he has them in shadow boxes and they're
Sure.
pristine, and whereas with me, I'm out there on the road playing 3 hours a night, you know, sleeping 4 hours and getting
Right.
back in the bus, driving in.
Yep.
So I'm not very, like, my guitars, when I get done with the tour, my guitars have blood on them. Uh, maybe, I mean, it's just,
Yeah.
and I also I don't give a crap about like how the neck is bowed I am
Hmm.
so not concerned. I just just give me a thing.
Right.
Does it play? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Give it to me.
Yep.
No.
That's awesome.
So my tech is very patient with, he knows that I'm not very I don't really take
Yeah,
great. So
but if you were, he'd be out of a job.
that's right. So getting back to the reason I brought this up is because on the tour I just did in Europe, I flew over with this guitar and my Candy Sunburst. But
Mm,
what happened was something funny. These are the two guitars I was going to play on the tour.
yep.
But on the first night in Barcelona, my tech is looking over my stuff, and he goes, Eric, he goes, dude, he goes, let me, because he goes, let me give you he has a gold top Steckel model
Okay. Yep.
that I got for him, you know.
Hmm.
So he goes, Eric, let me give you the Goldie for the tour. He goes, I'm going to take this home with me, right? And he goes, during the gaps in the tour, when you're off, he goes, I'm going to fix this thing up and get it back to the way it should be. And he
Okay.
says, and then at the end of the tour, we'll switch back. And man, so he really got this thing back to, you know,
Nice. Nice.
it was pretty rough. I mean, it was, you know, the neck hadn't been oiled in a long time. And, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
it's,
I hear you. I hear you. Well, I mean, this has been great. Before we get to the performance, Eric, anything else you wanted to let my listeners know about? Anything you want to promote? Any stories we left out? I want to make sure we cover just about everything.
Yeah, yeah. So basically, yeah. So this year, besides all the touring that's coming up, which is already going to be a lot, there's we're I can't say too much, but I can tell you we're about to sign a deal with a label, which would be my first. I've been
Nice.
independent since day one.
Okay.
And I have a lot of pride about that, and
Mhm.
it is a good way to work in the current music business to be independent. But the deal that we've just been offered, is like the best deal you're going to get in today's
Sure.
environment.
Yep, I hear you.
So, you know, and I have an attorney in my family, and she looked at everything, whatever. So it's something that we're probably going to end up doing. And if so, then they want an album out by like fourth quarter 2025. So, so if we sign the deal, if everything goes well, we're going to have not only an insane amount of touring in the summer and fall.
Sure, I
But
bet.
sometime in that period,
Come to Philly, please. Come to Philly.
I know I got to get back home, man. I know it's like, yeah. So sometime in that period that everything's going on, we're going to also have to get into the studio and make a record. So,
Sure. Yep.
And it would be my first major label release.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
And so we're gonna, which will be cool because, you know, I've always, and I'm very proud of this, I've always been able to really get a lot for my money, because when I go into the studio, you know, I'm not sitting around ordering pizzas, playing video game. Like I get the shit done.
Yeah, man.
You know, but it's going to be nice now to not be the one paying,
I see.
and just kind of breathe and say, listen,
Yep.
we're not going to look at the bank account. We're not going to look at the clock. We're going to focus on the music.
Perfect.
And just get the performances that we need. And if they're not right, we do another day or stay longer or whatever, because the budget is way more than what I would be able to throw out of my savings account or something.
Sure,
right?
I hear you. Yep.
So yeah, so that's going to be exciting. So if all goes well, if the timing works out, then maybe the fall tour might turn into the album tour.
Oh, okay, cool.
We'll see.
Nice.
We'll see.
Nice. Awesome.
But yeah, that's basically what's on the horizon. And yeah, there's trying to think if I'm missing anything. Well, yeah. So for folks, you know, I have 3 products out there that I work. So I have a Seymour Duncan pickup called Candy. I have obviously the Knaggs guitars, and then I have these fire breathing Ferrari amplifiers made in Italy, the Mezzabarba. It's the guy's last name. And these amps are, I have played basically every high gain amp on the market, because that's what I like. And I've played the top of the top. I mean, Diesel, Bogner, all this stuff. And these Mezzabarbas, man, I don't know, man. There's this little extra little 1% in there.
Okay.
It's hard to describe. I think, because I still love amps like the Diesel Herbert. I love that amp. Great high gain amp. The Cornford MK50. That's a cool, like, for people who know, like, collected, like, that's a great amp. There's a lot of great high gain amps out there. But the one thing that I think separates the Mezzabarba from all those is that most of the high gain amps in the market, the way that they get the gain is by really compressing the signal to where it's like really kind of squished.
Yep.
Right. Yep. And it can be kind of fizzy sometimes and small. Like if you're in a small room and you're hearing, let's say the Diesel, right?
Yep.
Amazing amp, right? But if you can't crank it, if you're just playing like on 1 or 2 in the master,
right,
it kind of sounds like a pedal or something, because you're not hearing the power amp. You're hearing just the little 12AX7.
Yep.
So that was always my struggle with like the Bogner Diesel amps, is that on stage cranked, amazing.
Yep.
But in smaller environments, it just sounded fizzy.
I hear you.
So when I plugged into the Mezzabarba for the first time, in a small room, and the master was on 1, and it wasn't fizzy. And I was like, man, this is what I need, you know? So that's basically my little pitch for Mezzabarba, is that, you know, there's a lot of great amps out there, but at lower volumes, most of them fall apart, and the Mezzabarba does not. So
that's amazing. That's awesome. Fantastic. What songs are you going to do for us today, Eric?
Man, I'm so sorry. I wasn't very prepared, but I so much going on in my head, but I think we can do, I'm thinking about songs that I could play, you know, alone with guitar. Maybe I'll do a thing called Day Drinking, which is kind of a cool tune. And then maybe if you wanted another one after that, maybe I could do Tennessee or something. So I think I could pull off.
And these are originals, right? They got to be originals, right? Okay, cool.
Yep.
Awesome.
Cool.
Thank you so much for doing the podcast. I appreciate it.
Oh, man, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
It's been so much fun talking with you.
All right, let's see if I remember all the words. Woke up on the sofa, house I've never been. Clock says 2 p.m. Time to start it up again. Well, my friend just left me this morning, yeah. Ain't got no worries and no cares. Got me an old guitar and a 50 jack. Time for some day drinking. Found me some Tennessee whiskey inside my freezer door. 2-day-old leftovers, yeah. What else could I be asking for? Well, my good friends just left me this morning, yeah. Ain't got no worries and no cares. Got me an old guitar and a 50 crown. Time for some day drinking. Found me some Tennessee whiskey. Inside my freezer door. 2-day-old leftovers, yeah. What else could I be looking for? Well, my friends just left me this morning, yeah. Ain't got no worries, no cares. Old guitar and a 50 crown. Time for some day. Old guitar and a 50 crown. Let's do some day. Old guitar and a 50 jack. Let's do some. Let's do some day drinking, baby.
Yeah, man.
All right.
Yeah, brother.
Yeah, cool, man.
That's awesome. I love it.
It's been a while since I've played that one without the band, you know. So like, but what's cool is like songs like that. for the solo sections is like just keep your foot tapping, and I'll always come back to the one, right? You know?
Yep, that's awesome.
So let me think. Let me try. Yeah, I think I can probably do this song called Tennessee. I think I can pull this off without the drummer. Yeah. How's the level between voice and guitar? All right.
Sounds great. Yep.
All right. Cool. All right. Let's try this one. So this is from the 2018 record. Yeah. Feeling restless, oh, I gotta make a scene. Feel the freedom burning red right inside of me. All gone. That's why I feel like driving way down to Tennessee. Can't be trusted. Oh, the city's got a hold of me. It's concrete jungle, baby. Ain't got no room for me. Oh, no. That's why I feel like driving way back to Tennessee. Way back to Tennessee, yeah. Green grass and back roads, as far as the eye can see. Burned out and reckless, oh, it ain't no way to be. Oh, no. That's why I feel like driving way down to Tennessee. All right.
Yeah, brother. Tear that shit up. Look at that.
Hey, that was good practice for me, man. I never play these songs without at least something behind it, so that's cool.
I appreciate it, man.
It's fun to try, man. Yeah, no, that was fun.
So much fun. Thank you so much again, Eric. I appreciate you being on the podcast.
Happy to do it.
It's great. I love it.